Today we're doing a repair on a Ford Focus 2011 model. It's got the 4-speed automatic transmission in it, and he's got shift problems. Now, it's never been serviced. He's checked the logbooks, nearly done 80,000 kilometres, and it hasn't had a transmission service in it. So I'm suspecting that the solenoid's probably contaminated with the fine metal. If you're unfamiliar with these, you open the bonnet by flicking up the little Ford emblem there, and you just use the key to open it there. Anyway, we're just going to take the oil out with our vacuum pump through the filler tube. The oil doesn't look too bad, and proceed with the service and check the solenoids. Now, these transmission pans have been Solenoid on, so what we've got to do is loosen all the bolts, or even take them off. Just leave probably four, 2 on either side, and then just run around with a razor blade, just right around. We've got to cut right around, try and cut the seal as far as we can all the way. If you just try and pry it off with a screwdriver, you'll end up damaging that little step there where the pan rail is, and then it won't seal properly. But when we do it, we'll put a gasket back on there instead of Solenoid. Anyway, we'll go ahead and do that and drop the pan. I'm just slowly going to go around with the razor blade, Stanley knife, and just try and cut the Solenoid. You can see a little bit through the bolt hole there. I've left 2 bolts on there, one either side, but there will be still a little bit of oil in here, so just be prepared to catch it in a container like we have here when it does drop. So I'm just going to go around and just cut slowly as much as I can, and just try and lever it off without bending or damaging anything. And there we go, it's come away, but it's splashed and made a bit of a mess everywhere. So you can see it's gone everywhere. You can see there's a fair bit of metal, fine metal on the magnet. What happens, the magnet won't be effective in collecting all that fine metal that's suspended in the oil that's floating around. It'll become attracted to these solenoids. So you got your pressure control solenoid and your 2 shift solenoids, and you got your PWM solenoids. So there's six solenoids in total in these transmission. And this transmission's the 4F27E, the 4-speed. And Mazda have an equivalent one. It's basically the same transmission. Anyway, so what we're going to do is we're going to take these solenoids off, demagnetize them, and flush them out. That way they'll be at least clean. It hasn't even done 80,000 kilometres, so I'd say that, yeah, and it looks like it's never been serviced because the pan's been Solenoid on there. And I've spoken to the owner, and they said go ahead, just do the minimum on it. The filter here, you've got your temperature sensor there. That filter just pops out. Just remember, when you're putting your new one on, just make sure it's got the O-ring on the top there on the suction. These filters as well, they've got a little snorkel on there. There's 2 different types. I'm not sure, one's slightly deeper one, and this one's got the shorter snorkel on it. Anyway, I'll go ahead and taking these solenoids off's quite simple. Just undo take the clips off, and they're little 8mm socket bolts. They pop out. There'll be a little O-ring in there. Just make sure when you're fitting it back in, you just wriggle it back in. And also on these shift solenoids, they've got a very fine coil wire, and it is known to break off. So we do a little modification on that, so it eliminates that problem in the future. So anyway, we'll go ahead and clean those and just put it back together, do the service on it, and go from there. Now these wires, just take a note of them, but you generally can't mix them up. These two solenoids are the same, and these three solenoids are the same. The only problem is if you plug the wrong wire in. So just make a note. Front one's the white one, green plug, blue plug to the rear, and on the shift solenoids here you've got the white one to the front of the vehicle and the black one goes to the rear. I'll just pop those out. You just wriggle them out like that. That's the pressure control solenoid. And that's the shift solenoid. And the other ones are a little bit more awkward to pull out because I haven't done. There's a little plate that covers it, and you've got to take all the bolts off. The plate actually pushes it, and you also have like a rubber seal in there that seals between the solenoid and the valve body. There we go. We've taken that plate off, and you can see it just comes off. It's got 4 bolts. And that's what it looks like. It just holds those rubber seals in place. And again, we just sort of twist them slightly. Just be careful on that plug. If you're levering it on that, you could break it. And there we go. They're the PWM solenoids. That's probably why they're a bit tighter. You can see the 3 seals on there. That's a good sign. It means the seals are sealing very well. And the last one. You can see how much muck's come out of those solenoids, so I believe there will be a great improvement. The O-rings on it don't seem too bad. If you have a look at them, they're nice and raised. They're higher than where it goes into the sleeve, and also they're nice and pliable. They're not hardened or anything like that. If they have hardened, it's a good idea to replace them. Also, these you can get these rubber seals in a kit as well. I'm not going to replace them this time. Just flush them out. Demagnetize. We have a demagnetizer that when you demagnetize them, you'll get a lot more metal coming out of it because it's not holding on. It's a bit like on your screwdriver. If you ever see a screwdriver magnetized and it just keeps collecting everything, well, the same thing happens with your solenoids. People try and flush them without demagnetizing them first. You'll get a lot more muck out of it if you demagnetize first. We'll go ahead and we'll put it on our little homemade or in-shop made tool here to just flush out these shift solenoids and put it all back together. Bit hard to do with one hand, but and you can see that it's not leaking at all. Go ahead and check the other one and put it back together. These PWM solenoids, they're actually controlled by amperage. The increase or decrease of amperage will move that little valve in there left and right. So without the proper tools, it's a bit hard to check for you, but even if you don't have a demagnetizer, certainly flushing these and cleaning them up will give you an improvement before you go ahead and buy them. The solenoids aren't real cheap, but they're easily replaced anyway, so it's definitely worth flushing them out if you have a problem or an issue, and then if you have to down the track buy the solenoids, find out which one's playing up and go from there. And just quickly, you can freeze frame this chart. It just shows you what clutches are applied in each of the gears. Self-explanatory there. And here's a diagram of which solenoids are applied in which of the gears. And a diagram of the valve body, which shows you which solenoids are controlling which particular shift and where it's located on the valve body. And finally, here's a diagram of the plugs, or the two different types of plugs that go into the Ford and the Mazda vehicles, and how much resistance you should be getting at each solenoid. You can see that you get with those PWM ones between 1 and 4.2 ohms. The shift solenoid should have between 10.9 and 26.2, and the pressure control should be 2.4 to 7.3. Also the temperature sensor, a little bit hard to measure that. You've got to gradually increase the heat in the sensor so you can get those little readings. But anyway, there's that, and it also shows, I don't know if you can see the little numbers on it, which little terminals you connect. You can test these without removing the pan or the solenoids if you're getting the right readings. These ohm readings here will be dependent on the air temperature. It's quite a cool day here today, probably about 10 degrees, so in our assembly room there the temperature's probably around the 20 degrees, so we're all within specs there. There's also the speed sensors. You've got your input and your output speed sensors, and what they should be, how much resistance they should be, and the location of them on the transmission. These PWM solenoids back on. The little gap there actually locates where the plug is, so you can't even put them on incorrectly, which is a good idea. Anyway, we'll go ahead and put those back in and complete the service. I hope that's helped. Anyway, we'll continue with that, and thank you for watching. Just make sure it's got the O-ring there on the filter pickup when you're putting the new filter in. Pin here will go into that little hole there on the valve body, so make sure that's in place as well. And finally, because we've had these solenoids out, just make sure you bend those wires just up a little bit so they're not rubbing on anything when you're driving along. These ones on this side seem okay, but this one here just sort of needs a little bit of reshaping just so it stays up and doesn't rub on the pan. And you can see that it's all nice and flush up against the valve body now. There we go. Thank you for watching.